saving you some time, the story I'm doing a video about is false. I don't normally say that at the beginning. Sometimes I do to save you time, but in this case it's definitively false for a dozen reasons. Now, I've converted it into a narrative, meaning I've retyped it by time basis and by importance and in a flowchart type way. The reason for that is so that you can actually read it. On the CIA website, CIA.gov, reading room docs DOC number, and it's a long string of numbers in a PDF. Within this is a PDF that is simply a presentation container for a TIF, meaning it was scanned from a image scanner like you would use for a modern photocopier where it scans the image and then dumps it to a printer. This is, in the document itself, it claims to be CIA file, a document 199 out of, it looks like 54,000. And it is part of a set of releases that were approved as of the year 2000 about research done from the year 2000 backwards. And this is part of a list of newspaper reports that alleged UFO incidents or mishaps that contained evidence. Now, you might remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and you might see people claim that close encounters of a specific type are more rare than others. One of the common misconceptions or lies is that you'll hear that claims of evidence of UFO contact are very rare. The reality is the exact opposite. Virtually everybody claims to have hard evidence. The ones that are able to produce it are extremely rare. And there are cases like that where we actually have genuine mysteries. There are a very small number of them, and over time, eventually we find out what was likely happening, but we may never know because these are incidents from, in some cases, decades ago. So what is this claim about 23 Russian troops turned to stone because alien creatures attacked them? Number one, that's a gross lie. The actual claim made in this is that military people fired first. So, right off the bat, we have a lie. Okay, now let's listen to this. This is the chain of evidence. How did we get this? Now remember, the CIA document 199 out of 54,000 some odd, or whatever, claims that this is a newspaper report. Now remember, some parts of this, unfortunately, are the original piece of paper that they got a hold of that they're putting on file, and then top and bottom of it, without the clear lines I wish they'd put in, doesn't include whether or not that is part of the newspaper report. I don't know if you know this, but some newspaper reports that you get are made to look like CIA reports. That's foreshadowing. Claim, 1993, March 27th, holos ukrayiny, or Voice of Ukraine, a Kiev newspaper. Page 5, reprinted, inside of the ternopil vechirniy. Ternopil means today, so it just means vechirniy, or whatever it is. It's a city name, today. That'd be like Portland Today or New York Today as a newspaper title. This newspaper, again, is being reproduced in another newspaper in Voice of Ukraine. Okay? And it's called Cosmic Revenge, a story that said an authoritative magazine is being cited. Canadian Weekly World News magazine. Some of you immediately had your ears pick up, maybe become pointed. Bat boy. Let's move on. Anyway, let's review. This is a Ukrainian newspaper claiming that another newspaper claims that they got something from the Weekly World News out of Canada, which can have a French and English translation going on. That'll explain some of this. And that they claimed, the CIA claimed, that they got a report from the KGB. So let's review this. This is a claim in Ukraine that some other place is claiming that they got something from Canada that could have been French or English or translated that came from originally the CIA that claimed that the KGB said the story. Now let's review. The CIA has a file up on there that you can look at that has a chain of evidence that claims that they're the ones who said this. But ultimately, the buck stops here one is that the KGB made a claim sometime before 1993 that they had a 250-page file. It had photos, drawings, and testimonials from participants and victims alike. And they made the claim about the story. Now we're at the 5-minute mark, and I'm just trying to do the chain of evidence. The same magazine that did Bat Boy and said that they interviewed a Sasquatch hooker is your source. Or it's the CIA claiming they got it from the KGB. We're going to read back first the CIA representative that's cited in this. If the KGB file corresponds to reality, that is not a wording that would be used in English, obviously. So this is as a result of translation through Ukrainian and Russian and probably French Canadian. I'm seeing this as probably French Canadian translation badly, and back to English and back and forth. This is an extremely menacing case. The aliens possess such weapons and technology that go beyond our assumptions. Why would you have assumptions about some space aliens that could travel and traverse the galaxy? Let's move on. They can stand up for themselves if attacked. Surprise Pikachu face. Next. A horrific picture of revenge on the part of extraterrestrial creatures. A picture that makes one's blood freeze, said the CIA representative, according to the KGB, according to the CIA, according to the French-Canadian tabloid. All translated. Okay, let's move on. What is the actual story? This is the actual story, and I'm going to explain why this is actually pretty sad. A Siberian military unit was on training maneuvers. A, they're a crack team that knows what they're doing, or B, they're literally trainees in the 90s, and something happened. They fired a missile at what they perceived to be an attacking aircraft, and it was saucer-shaped, a UFO. 5 survived the attack when they hit it. They claimed that they had big heads and black eyes, and they merged into a single sphere that began to buzz and hiss sharply, became brilliant white, grew bigger, and exploded. 23 out of the 27 soldiers were now dead. They were limestone poles, no different than limestone. I want you to think about that for a minute. 2 of them survived because they stood in the shade or had cover, depending on the transliteration back and forth from Russian, French, and English here. The UFO and the petrified soldiers' remains were sent to a secret Moscow scientific research institution. Okay, 1990s, early 90s, Siberian military unit trainees fire a surface-to-air missile. If you're not aware of that, if it's a short enough range, what would it do to you? And what if it hit something? I don't know if you know about this, but I can't find the video. It was on a website you don't want to go to, but there's a video of someone trying to fire a surface-air missile and hitting a tree branch and it detonating and taking out everybody. They killed themselves. 2 survived. The only thing they could remember is some crazy stuff they said while being covered with burns and probably dying eventually, and that the others were like limestone poles. That's it. That's what happened. But this went through a game of telephone that is horrible. Number 1, we have at least 1 tabloid involved. 2, probably a language change from French to English to Russian or back and forth. A claim that the KGB and the CIA are involved because that would always get people to buy papers anywhere you had it. If the KGB said that the CIA said something or the other way around, you're going to sell papers. Just put Bat Boy on there. But anyway, a Ukraine newspaper in Kiev on page 5, holos ukrayiny, March 27th, 1993, if you can find it. Reprinted some other newspaper entire story, this whole story, and calling it Cosmic Revenge, and said that their authoritative magazine source in Canada was the Weekly World News, and that the Weekly World News claimed that the CIA made the claim, but they were claiming that the KGB made the claim. And now we get to the last part. There is a claim of a 250-page report with photos, drawings, or more accurately, crime scene or accident scene investigation drawings and maps, and testimonials from the two participants that were alive at the time and probably weren't later. Maybe they were. And this claim is basically a Serbian military unit were on training maneuvers and they had possession of a surface-to-air missile launcher and launched it at something, and the effect was that they fired it at something, 5 things fell down, then it burst into flames after merging into a giant fireball and took out most of them. Now the translations of stone poles or limestone or whatever could also, if you wanted to be really cruel and joke about it, Polish people who were stoned or high. You could also have it be all sorts of things. Depending on the sense of how this was done, it could be anything. They don't give a time and date stamp to the tabloid in Canada, so we don't know that. So it happened sometime before 1993. But they do give the page number on one thing. Voice of Ukraine, holos, ukrayiny. It's a newspaper in Kiev, page 5. Find a reprint of it, and it has a reprint from this other one. And it's from Ternopil today. Ternopil is the name of the town. Today is spelled as vechirniy. And this newspaper did a sensationalistic story called Cosmic Revenge based on a tabloid in Canada. At least it's claimed that way. And again, it could have gone through English, French, Russian, and then a local change in Ukraine too, for all you know. I mean, there is more than one language in these areas too. And all of this is based on a claim that the CIA said they got the story from the Russians. Now, of course, ironically, when you go to the CIA page, it's the only link that has any of this. It's literally a self-looping now because the only place you can find it is on the CIA website. This is a tabloid story that got run through basically the equivalent to Google Translate too many times. And yeah, a military unit was on training maneuvers. They fired a surface-to-air missile at something and ended up with most of the people who were involved in the training mission getting killed. And yes, if you look up really old documentation from the early 90s, you can find some of these incidents referred to. There's more than one that this could match up. One involved shooting the missile at a hot air balloon with 5 travelers in it. That's probably the one. And it was at night, and they started up the engine, the fire, and came up. They were doing something I wouldn't recommend. They were doing a hot air balloon activity at night. So, Joe Rogan and all the other websites and sources that didn't dismantle this horribly made-up document. And again, 100% of it almost, because they don't properly demarcate. This is the original document. I mean, this is a typed-up report about a game of telephone involving North American tabloids. No, a CIA representative did not say any of these things, and the blood freezes. And yeah, this is a horrible incident that probably happened. It was real, and it's probably the one where they accidentally fired at a hot air balloon, and it blew up, and it was close to them. It came up, and they got freaked out, and they fired because that's what the guy was messing with, being trained on. And it was at night. He was just fiddling with it, and he fired the damn thing, and it hit, blew up, and took everything out. And the 5 people who survived from the balloon and 2 of the soldiers were all the witnesses they had, and the soldiers were burned on their faces. So they weren't really able to describe much. They were blinded. But okay, you can believe whatever you wish to. Please don't cite this. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.